So now for the final speaker of the day. He is a man of action, a man who works for a cause, and a man who never gives up. Please welcome Major Arun Ambati. He is a veteran of the Indian Army Parachute Regiment, which is an elite airborne special forces unit, and he is also the director of CLAW Global. CLAW Global is Conquer Land, Air, and Water, and you can find the links to that on our social media, so do check that out. He served our nation for 11 years and has been crucial in a number of army operations. He is a superhero on and off the field. He works extensively to support social ventures for the youth and specially abled people as part of CLAW Global and Operation Blue Freedom. Sir, I welcome you to this platform. The audience cannot wait to hear your thrilling journey. The stage is all yours, sir.
Hi. That was a very generous introduction, but yeah, I don't know if I can justify that kind of an introduction. But anyways, it's really nice to be on this platform, and I would like to thank all the faculty and the organizers of TEDx Vivekananda College. It's really a well curated event and very well conducted as well. I've been following the session since morning. You guys are doing a fabulous job. So, there are a lot of phenomenal personalities who've spoken before me, and I don't know if I match up to their stature, but either ways, I definitely have certain ideas to share. I have a journey to share. I have a story to tell, and I have a call to action to make for all of you guys today. So I think that is my role over here. So the theme of the whole event is a spark within. So I will share instances from my life where the spark within has turned around things for me, and how have I managed to sustain that spark through my personal journeys, and I'll give you certain specific takeaways. So I was, just a normal schoolboy at one point of time, like you and me, and before I was even born, my father had decided that, one day I will join the armed forces. So at that time, it never really made sense to me. I was, I would say, rather pushed into Sainik school, and the military training starts very young in Sainik school. But I was always, it was just like a journey just passing by. There was nothing great happening. But in glimpses, what I could see is what were my core inner callings. I had glimpses of that once a while. So at that time, it was just a general feeling. It was very, very nebulous, where I always was seeking the greatest thing, the biggest things for myself. So when my grandfather asked me, what would you like to become? I said, what's the highest paying job? I would become that. At that time, apparently it was a pilot, so on and so forth. So I was generally seeking the largest, the biggest, and the greatest, but there was no real big spark happening at that time. There was one significant incident during my school time that was quite significant for me. I read this book by Dr. Abdul Kalam, and I would just like to present that quote to you. Okay, so there was this book called Ignited Minds by Abdul Kalam and Wings of Fire. There was some apparent homework given to us to do a book review of that, but somehow some key takeaways from that book stuck to me. So that was a very, very key kind of a trigger in a normal life which was just chugging along. There was a deep in-seated urge for me to do something and express myself. So that is what it's highlighted over here, that we are all born with a divine fire in us. Our effort should be to give wings to this fire, and and to make the world glow with the goodness of that fire. So this was a very significant thing for me. That was a big push for me to, from there, do good, clear the exams. In that year when I completed my class 12th, I was, I ranked All India rank 17th, and I was the topper in my state. I joined the National Defense Academy, and I started undergoing training. But yet again, life was happening in sine waves. For again, it was just a passenger like of a thing. There was nothing really really exciting. And, I was just chugging along like every other trainee would at National Defense Academy, So life was just moving on, and I was just, I would rather say, just passing time. But there was one big incident which again happened during National Defense Academy, where I was relegated for certain reasons. I was rusticated. That kind of a spark that triggered in me again. It was basically I wanted to prove at that time. It was a very limited motive that I had. Okay, I'm being judged. So I'm going to prove to the world that it is because of choice that I'm just chugging along, and not because of who I am as a person. So I decide my identity as to who I am. So at that time I asked, what's the biggest, greatest thing? So this was a recurring thread in my life since my beginning, where I was always seeking the biggest and the greatest thing. At that time, the biggest and the greatest thing for a person who was an armed forces trainee cadet was to join the special forces. I was like, okay, I'm going to now volunteer for the special forces. All my batchmates was like, no, you're not going to make it, and so on and so forth. But for me, that spark was very, very significant, and I just persisted with that spark. And eventually, I completed my National Defense Academy, completed my Indian Military Academy, and then volunteered for the special forces. And then I did manage to, join the Allied Parachute Regiment. So I'll present my screen once again. So in a nutshell, this slide is my life, from being a chocolate boy to joining the special forces. That's me when I cleared my probation and when I joined the special forces, So, so that was what it was, While in the special forces, I was serving in a relatively peaceful time in Kashmir, So that was one of the sine wave aspect of life, where life was just chugging along. But I was repeatedly facing injuries, and I suffered injuries in combat, and I was stagnant. Basically, I was ruled out of further combat deployments, and I was hospitalized. While I was hospitalized, I was just figuring out what to do next, and I was just reflecting on things. For some reason, there was a big strange transformative experience where certain things occurred to me. I started researching about a lot of social issues, and I started developing a lot of strong social passions that I would like to do X and Y, Z things. At that time, this line somehow stuck to me very, very strongly. I don't know why. When I finished my schooling, I had, at that time, Gmail was very, very new. I had formed my first email ID. It reads nervesofsteel.arun. I don't know why I called my email ID Nerves of Steel, but somehow when I was going through my hospitalization, when I was bedridden, when I could not move my body left, body right, I could just exercise my brain. I was reading, and I was having these very strong urges to do certain things. I was becoming very, very passionate about doing certain things. This was a line I would like to bring out, that my countrymen should have nerves of steel, muscles of iron, and minds like thunderbolt. My muscles were iron, where I was trained quite a bit, but it's really the mind. My mind was literally racing like thunderbolt. While I was hospitalized, I was bedridden for close to 80 days, at that time. And this quote is also significant for you guys, because your college is named after Sri Vivekananda, Swami Vivekananda. And it's a very powerful quote which captured the essence of what I was going through that phase, where I was hospitalized and injured, and I was looking to transition into the next stage. So for me at that point, this was the spark to that led me to come outside, and then I started exploring various social avenues. I started with forestry. That's when in 2019 I met Major Vivek Jacob, and our visions matched quite a bit. And you guys did hear Major Vivek Jacob in the morning, and our visions matched quite a bit, and we started working together. I started working with him in Claw Global, and from there Operation Blue Freedom, and so on and so forth. So that's my journey with how I transitioned from the armed forces, basically from Sainik school to then the special forces, and from the special forces to social ventures, and then eventually amongst the social ventures, and I met Major Vivek Jacob, and I started my journey with Claw Global. So out here in Claw Global, it's from there, with every passing sine wave of my life, where I was losing steam, I was stagnating, and then there was a spark, and then I was expanding exponentially. After some point, at each iteration of the cycle of sparks and waves and expansion, I was having realizations. where at certain point of time it was just an urge to self-express. From there it become a urge to do something for the country, and then from there it expanded to do something for all of humanity. So all of these thoughts combined together is what we are doing today as part of Claw Global. Claw Global is an organization, is a group of ex-special forces soldiers who think alike, and then we've gotten together under Major Vivek Jacob, and then we are executing a lot of business verticals which we feel will have exponential social impact, right? So the first one of them is the triple world record. I'm sure most of you would have heard it. We wanted to demonstrate our capability in our expertise in land, air, and water. We conceptualized 3 world records by a joint team of people with disabilities and special forces, ex-special forces soldiers, which showcase our mastery in all 3 elements of land, air, and water. If you've heard about it from Major Vivek Jacob in the morning as well. Then eventually we would like to, this is the appreciation from the Prime Minister as well. Eventually we would like to institutionalize all of this vision that we have about various exponential social impactful ecosystems under the human ability biome. This is our current project that we are working on. This is in some ways a culmination of all of our visions, all of our energies, all of our experiences put together, right? Where we feel this is something that can transform the lives of people with disabilities. It can transform the youth of this country, and it can touch the lives of a lot of people in very, very significant ways. And it is a very, very significant conduit for us to express ourselves as well. Yeah. With that, I'll play a small clip.
The games begin. Yeah. Come walk in my shoes. I done paid all my dues. I got something to prove. All in, nothing to lose. Right now a new day starts. Woke up my brain heart. Stand up and play my part. Like the crowd wave starts. Been patient long enough. Not waiting, I'm bossing up. Life is like a toss-up. I tempted triple, crossed it up. We born to be giant slayers. We shine too bright to shade us or face us. We love the pressure. This what made us. Something's coming. Something's coming. Something's coming. Let the games begin. I was born for this. From day one I wanted it. We come too far to quit. Ain't no stopping it. I was born for this. From day one I wanted it. We come too far to quit. Ain't no stopping it. Ain't no stopping it. Time to rise up. Time to rise up. Time to rise up. Time to rise up. So let's go crazy, crazy like Prince in the 1980s. Don't play me, I'm not Brady. Too blown, you can't deflate me. Yes, ballin' is my calling. Can't box me out, I'm all in. We built from yes, y'all in. Top of the charts and never falling. It's time, beast mode. Put it on the line, free throws. It's Friday, I'm Debo. Take it back like repo. Got on my headphones, eyes closed in my zone. I've been down this road every time I drove it home. Then set back up again like it's 1st and 10. Only aim to win. Let the games begin. I was born for this. From day one I wanted it. We come too far to quit. Ain't no stopping it. I was born for this. From day one I wanted it. We come too far to quit. Ain't no stopping it. Ain't no stopping it. Ain't no stopping it. Ain't no stopping it. Let the games begin.
So that was a glimpse of the activities we are currently pursuing. That was one of our initial projects that we're pursuing, that is the triple world records. Eventually it will get institutionalized under the human ability biomes. So that's what we are doing these days. So that was my personal journey that I've outlined, So there are certain key takeaways that I would like the listeners in the audience to take away from, you most of you are still in college, we call students of Vivekananda College, and a lot of people who follow us on Claw Global are also listening in. So what I have figured out in my life in all of these ups and downs is what I would like you to take away from. For me, it was initially, it was a general feeling where I wanted to express myself and I wanted the biggest and the greatest things for myself. Yeah, and with every passing iteration, the concept expanded. Eventually I wanted to contribute for nation building, and then eventually I wanted to do my best to help humanity, and eventually it all came down to a full circle. uh, what I realized is that humanity is fine. Humanity will take care of itself if you be the highest version of yourself. So the ultimate why was, what I realized is that you have to be yourself and express yourself in the highest form, because you are the most efficient in doing what you like doing, and that's you are likely to cause the maximum impact and cause the maximum benefit for humanity when you are yourselves and you focus on self-expression. So that is the full circle. That's where I started as a young child, and that's the conclusion that I've come back to. But in this journey, we all of us, we are bound to be in various stages. There must be people amongst you who are very passionate about their family. There must be people amongst you who are very passionate about certain causes, people who want to help pets, people who want to help in the neighborhood. All of these are various stages of consciousness, but wherever you are, you can pick cues from my personal journey as well. But the number one question that you need to be asking is, why are you doing what you are doing? If you're in college, why are you in college? It cannot be immediate reasons. Once you ask these questions over and over again as to why are you doing this, it will occur to you at some point. When you ask this question and once you're convinced about the why, the house can be figured out. There's not, like I tell people, that there's nothing that YouTube cannot teach you these days. And when you put your mind sufficiently into it, that this is what you want to do, and when you're convinced why you want to do it, the house, you will figure it out in no time. So what is the why? Now the why for various people in various stages of this consciousness will be different. For example, if you are very, very patriotic, that's a certain stage of a consciousness. It's okay to be patriotic. It's good to be patriotic. You can at least think beyond yourselves, right? So that is, if that is your why, then focus on that, whatever is the why. But keep revisiting that why. Keep revisiting that why will keep expanding your consciousness at every stage, right? So there was a small little trick that I used to do. When I was asking this why of me, I was asking, why am I doing what am I doing? So one way of finding where my heart lies, that's when I realized that this process of asking the why is ultimately, you will boil down to doing what your heart likes. So I used to measure my leisure. I call it the technique of measuring your leisure. All of us have 24 hours, but there are things that we do because we are asked to do, we are forced to do, because we have classes to attend. But there is always, no matter how busy you are, you have time for yourselves. What do you do in those 8 hours? Make a list of those things, and take one particular week or a few days and just overdo them, hours and hours. Let's take a 4-5 day thing, and let's say that you are into watching short videos on Instagram. Let's just say, if you do that over and over, what you will realize that if it was either you were doing that in your leisure because of two reasons, either because it's a fad or it's a passion. If it is a fad, it will fade away when you overdo it. If it was a real passion, it will stick around. That's when there are times when I've spent entire nights doing certain things that I got really, really passionate about. That's one way that you will find your why. That's you start measuring your leisure. And the second thing, like what Major Jacob told you in the morning, the heart is the compass. It's a very, very powerful thing. It's very oft repeated. Everybody says that, but it's a little difficult to do that. But start with small little things that you like doing. Just overdo them over and over, and see how you can construct your life so that you can just do that. So ultimately where you will reach is, self-expression is the highest why. For now it might feel like, okay, I want to build my immediate neighborhood. No, I like trees, I want to save trees. I like pets, I want to save pets. All of this is fine. Ultimately what it will boil down to, the greatest why, is your own self-expression, and the reasons I've already pointed out. Now there's okay, so this is all the conceptual framework and all of that. And as college going children, there are specific actions that you would like to hear. So there is always one thing that you can do right now, that is doing versus thinking. So there are various styles of self-expression. I'll just share what works for me. What works for me is, it's okay to think and keep reflecting about and keep studying about things. There was a time when I was researching about social issues so much that it was all bungling up in my head, and I had to express it all. For me, the best way is to just start doing it, no matter what. Take small little steps. So I reached out to a certain group of people who were into forestry. I started learning forestry from them, and from there I met a few people. I met one of my colonels who was working in helping the youth, and I worked on with him in developing some apps. And then from there I moved on to doing motivation lecture for colleges. I did almost 40 workshops. That's when I met Major Jacob. So one thing led to the other, but first you just need to start moving. So where do you start from? So you, in your immediate circumstances, look for avenues. All of us have a certain feeling for family. When you talk of your siblings, your parents, you have a certain feeling of trust and love, right? Trust and sacrifice, which is the combination of love, right? So there exists a certain element of trust, and there exists a certain element of sacrifice. Parents sacrifice for the children all the time. Children and parents trust each other. So, but a similar level of feelings doesn't exist on a social scale, on the scale of a national level, or on the scale of humanity. If we can somehow extend the same strength of sense of trust and sense of sacrifice which exists within a family for all of society and eventually for all of humanity, that is one of the strongest things that you can contribute. So how do you do that? So you need to start engaging with your immediate surroundings. You start looking around, start going out with people. There are a whole lot of initiatives happening in your immediate surroundings. There are a whole lot of people facing difficulties in your immediate surroundings. Start understanding the implications of it. Start looking, start asking. That is one big takeaway. But whatever it is, whatever little you understand of, keep reflecting on it, but start doing something. Start with your most immediate circumstances and start with asking your why. So this is what has worked for me, and this is the one takeaway that I would like to give from my personal experiences. And yeah, if there was any validation that you needed, I've outlined the journey of my life. Yeah. So with that, I would want you guys to take away. The Republic Day is coming very close by. All of us get very patriotic around these Independence Days and Republic Days, but it all wanes after that. Our existence is a social existence. On a day-to-day basis, we gain a lot of things from the society. It is our moral duty to give back to the society. So start by looking for avenues and places where you can express yourself, but at the same time be of use to the society, country, and the humanity at large. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I think I will now begin the question and answer session with you.
Yeah,
and
please.
Let's begin on a note that is very common and very on which we've also received a lot of questions for you.
Yeah.
So how has being in the special forces changed your life? How has it changed you as a person? And how has it unleashed your spark within?
Okay. So special forces is about two things, right? That is about mindset and about skill set. Firstly, a little caveat, I served in the airborne special forces. There's a slight difference between airborne special forces and special forces, but yeah, there's quite a bit of overlap and similarities. So special forces is two things. One is that it's a mindset, and second, it's skill set, right? So how has it helped me in finding the spark within, right? So I was in Scenic school, and I was a very problematic and a rebellious kid. I would not just adhere to rules, rather prefer to get the punishment, So I had gotten enough punishments and enough ragda during my Scenic school days. So I thought, I've seen enough. enough of physical grueling physical regime.
Right.
But then when I went to National Defense Academy, in the first 1 week, you have no idea what hit me. I was like, damn, calm aphasia type, it was pure hell. It was hell unleashed upon you of a different caliber, And the first time, I still remember, 7th, 8th day, they let you speak to your parents and they give you an option. If you want to run away, you can vanish right now from the training, kind of a thing. I didn't do that, but when I first called my parents, I was literally sobbing. I was like, where did you push me into, kind of a thing. So at every stage, the limits of what I understood of myself was redefined. If I understood in Sainik school that this is my physical limits or my mental limits to take on stressful situations, that was redefined a notch higher in National Defense Academy. When I volunteered for the Special Forces, it was taken a notch higher, way higher. I was again in NDA, also a problematic cadet. Used to often get into trouble. So I said, no, I'm an ex-NDA. I've seen 4 years of training. I've seen it all. I've seen enough of physical punishments and mental stress and things like that. But Special Forces has something special in store for you.
Right.
So what it does is it that experience of extreme stress and extreme physical this thing tells you what is the limit. So what is that limit? That limit is that realization that there is no limit. Ultimately, there is no limit. Then you come to a point where you're like, yeah, if I can do this, then I can do anything in life. You ultimately boil down to that realization. What Special Forces also does is, within the armed forces also, Special Forces is quite respected. The parachute regiment especially is quite respected for the kind of work we do. It fills you with a certain sense of purpose, a certain sense of pride. When you wear that maroon beret, even people within the rest of the armed forces, they respect you, they treat you in a certain way. Your words are taken more seriously, and so on and so forth. It fills you with a certain pride. It gives you a certain sense of purpose. So those are the things that help me sustain the spark within. But the biggest trigger to the spark within itself was the fact that it redefined what I thought about myself. So there's ultimately no limits for a human being. You can just be anything and everything and can do anything, is the ultimate conclusion you come to. So yeah.
Right. So I think I'll quickly ask you to elaborate on this actually.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say that once you have seen situations like that, you realize that there is no limit, and that if I can do this, then what can I not do? I can do so much more as well.
Yeah.
So is that something that has driven you to work diligently at Claw Global as well?
The reason for me working diligently in Claw Global is because it is in alignment with my why. That is the reason, And yes, that experience of seeing the limits and exploring that limits, that's exactly what we are doing in Claw Global. So if we can do this, then we can do this as well, then this as well, then this as well. Then
Right.
there is a thrill in seeking the limits. So we are constantly first seeking the limits, survive, stabilize, and thrive, right? So we are seeking the limits, seeing what is possible, and then we are redefining the limits and taking it a notch ahead. That's our constant endeavor at Claw Global every day. For example, if you take the Siachen trek, it was very difficult convincing the army to permit to take a team of people with disabilities. Forget Siachen Glacier, the army doesn't let people with disabilities anywhere close to high altitude areas, field areas.
Right.
But we wanted to explore that limit because we had seen that spirit. The spirit that a Special Forces soldier experiences, a similar experience is what people with disabilities have, because they also go through such phenomenal hardship in their life, especially when they pick up their disabilities. They at some point feel suicidal, and at some point decide that, screw it, I want to live it. So when they have made that shift that they want to live life, that's a very, very powerful spirit. But that spirit is not able to express itself because of lack of enabling environment. Right now, that's the same spirit that Special Forces soldiers possesses. In that amount of a stress, he still decides to thrive. He still decides to do what he wants to do, what he's supposed to do, so on and so forth. Right. So that is one of the reasons why we very closely connected to the cause of people with disabilities. It's a lot of things. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the synergy between my experiences in the special forces and applying of all of those experiences in global and Operation Blue Freedom. Yeah.
Okay. So I think I will have one quick question here, and then I'll come back to another experience that you mentioned. So when you talk about working at the differently abled and the specially abled people at Claw Global, it takes empathy to understand their needs as well, and to work with them and to give them that respect that they deserve. What would you recommend that society needs to change? We are a group of change makers right now. We are a group of young, enthusiastic students who are setting out into the world, making a difference. So, sir, what would you recommend to us? What would be your insight to us on this matter?
Okay. So, people with disabilities, right? If you could just repeat the last bit.
I'll rephrase that. Yes.
Yeah.
So essentially what I'm asking is, if there was a message that you were to give.
Yeah, empathy. I got your point. Right. Yeah. So this thing about empathy, right? How can we all become more empathetic? So empathy, compassion, all of these things come from a certain, what I feel is it comes from a certain level of consciousness. So when I was hospitalized, I could not move, and I was just constantly watching fit people who were fitter, and just I was just keep staring at their legs. When would I get back to that level of physical ability, and so on and so forth. So when I finally got discharged from hospital, and the first time I went, I was the aide de camp to a senior general, and I had a very nice small cottage by this river. And when I was just entering, there were these soldiers, the guards over there, so every time I was an officer, they would salute me, stamp simultaneously and salute. For me, suddenly something very strong occurred to me. Why does that person have to be, can just be himself? I was like, it's okay, you don't have to do that, you just relax. I was full of empathy at that time. So that, for me, that empathy has persisted, in the sense that I've always had a lot of empathy and compassion. But in my experience, that comes from the level of consciousness that you are in. If you understand the fullest implication of your being, if you understand the fullest implication through awareness of your surroundings, what is the impact you have on the larger society, on the humanity as a whole, and that is when you will feel connected. All of this level of awareness comes from an expanded consciousness, that itself will naturally produce the empathy. Then it is not a struggle for you to put yourselves in the shoe of somebody else to become more empathetic. So right. When you are an officer, army officer, leading Jawans, empathy is the number one thing that will see you make you a successful leader. So at that point of time, it was for us combat efficiency. To become efficient in combat, you have to lead them efficiently. To lead them efficiently, you have to be empathetic. You should understand what they're going through. Only then you can lead them. It's not as much as the machines than it is the men, right? Mm-hmm. So that came little naturally, being empathetic, understanding, basically the ability to put myself in their shoes and visualize what are the problems that they're facing, what are the concerns they could be having, so on and so forth. Now that was a certain level of consciousness when I had these transformative experiences, where I started being more aware of the social realities and my role in the larger context of humanity. Then I have a certain different consciousness. So at that time, my empathy levels and compassion levels are way higher, and they're way nuanced. So I don't have to be a person with disability to understand what is the problem that he is going through. I wouldn't claim that I know everything, but we know enough to do something positive for them. So that level of an empathy and compassion applies to all sections of marginalization, women, people of color, people with disabilities, right. And a whole lot of issues in this world will get solved if all of us become more compassionate and more empathetic. But I think that comes from expansion of consciousness. So you could start with immediate things that you are compassionate towards. For example, you will naturally be compassionate towards your parents. You could just ask why. Most people are compassionate towards their dogs, pets, but you'll find that they are rude to the maids, so that's not how things work, right? So that's a certain level of consciousness. It's to have the highest form of empathy and compassion, that's love. So having that for everybody will be by expanding your awareness. And yeah.
Well, that is a wonderful thought, sir. And I'm sure we'll all give it, a little more time and we'll all think about it. We will try and inculcate what we have heard here today in our life in small steps. So we'll start small and then we'll expand. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. This is all the time for questions that we have today, but it was wonderful speaking to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.